In a freezing Tennessee winter, while most people were cranking their thermostats and complaining about heating bills, Marcus Williams stood barefoot on a polished wood floor inside a barn he bought for $175. 2 years earlier, Marcus slept on a bench outside a Nashville shelter, wearing every piece of clothing he owned because the temperature had dropped to 19 degrees. He had no family to call, no bank account, no address, nothing but a beat-up backpack and a phone with a cracked screen that he used to scroll through YouTube videos when he could find a McDonald's with free Wi-Fi. Today, that same man owns a fully functioning off-grid home with running water, working electricity, a wood-burning stove, and a chicken coop out back. He built every inch of it himself. The barn he transformed sits on 3 acres of rural Tennessee land that the county had basically given up on. This is how he did it. Marcus grew up in Memphis, the kind of neighborhood where the city stops mowing the grass and the streetlights stay broken for years. His mother worked 2 jobs at a hospital. His father was never around. By the time he was 18, he had taught himself basic carpentry from helping his uncle fix up rental properties on the weekends. He could frame a wall, he could install a door, he could read a level and cut a board straight. None of it was glamorous work, but it was the kind of skill set that would matter more than he could have imagined. After high school, he got a job at an automotive parts factory outside of Nashville. Steady work, decent pay. He rented a small apartment, saved a little money, and lived a quiet life. He bought a used Ford pickup truck. He started taking classes at a community college on the weekends. For the first time in his life, he felt like the future might actually go in his favor. Then, in 2021, the factory announced it was closing. 512 workers were laid off in a single afternoon. Marcus was one of them. The closing came out of nowhere. The plant manager called everyone into the cafeteria, read a statement from a piece of paper, and security walked them all out by the end of the shift. He spent 6 months looking for work. He applied to over 200 jobs. He got interviews at warehouses, fast food restaurants, and a couple of car dealerships. Nothing stuck. The unemployment money ran out. His landlord gave him 30 days to leave. He sold his furniture, packed what he could fit into a duffel bag, and started sleeping in his truck. When the truck was repossessed, he started sleeping in shelters when there was space and on benches when there was not. 2 winters passed like that. What kept him going was a habit he had developed in the public library. He would sit in the corner with a borrowed laptop and watch homesteading videos. People building cabins from scratch, off-grid families running their entire homes on solar panels, old-timers showing how to install plumbing without calling a plumber. Marcus took notes on napkins. He filled 3 small notebooks with sketches and diagrams. He studied wiring schematics. He learned how septic systems worked. He read about rainwater filtration. He did not know why he was doing it. He just knew he was tired of being cold, and he had to fill the long hours with something that felt like progress. In the spring of 2023, while sitting in the Nashville Public Library, Marcus stumbled onto a county tax auction website. Bedford County, Tennessee, was selling off properties that had been abandoned for years. Most were worthless lots in the middle of nowhere, properties the county had seized for unpaid taxes and could not get rid of through normal channels. But one listing caught his eye, a 2-acre parcel with what the county called a structure of indeterminate condition. Starting bid, $175. Marcus had $212 to his name. Every cent he had managed to save from day labor jobs, can collecting, and the occasional kindness of strangers. He had been carrying that money in a sock for almost a year, terrified to spend it. That money was his only safety net. It was the only thing standing between him and complete destitution. He used a guest computer at the library to register for the auction. He bid $175. Nobody else bid. 3 weeks later, he was the legal owner of a property he had never even seen. The county clerk mailed the deed to the public library address he had used. When the librarian handed him the envelope, his hands were shaking. He hitched a ride to Bedford County with a trucker who was heading to Chattanooga. The walk from the highway to his new property was 4 miles down a gravel road that turned into a dirt road that turned into barely a road at all. When he finally arrived, he stood there in disbelief. The barn was leaning to one side. Half the roof was caved in. The wooden walls were warped and missing entire boards. Vines had grown up through the floorboards inside. Birds had nested in the rafters. A family of raccoons had clearly been using the loft as a winter den. There was no electricity within half a mile, no running water, no septic system. The nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away through dense woods. Most people would have walked back to the highway and never come back. Marcus dropped his duffel bag in the doorway and started cleaning. The first month was the hardest stretch of his life, and that is saying something for a man who had spent 2 years homeless. He slept inside the barn on a tarp because there was no other option. He used a small camping stove someone had given him at a shelter. He carried water in a 5-gallon jug from a creek about 300 yards away. He used a shovel and a bucket for everything else. He ate canned beans and rice he cooked over the camping stove. He bathed in the creek when the weather allowed. A neighbor named Linda Patterson, who lived down the road in a single-wide trailer, called the sheriff after about 2 weeks because she saw smoke coming from the property and assumed someone was squatting. The deputy who showed up was a younger guy named Officer Hayes. Marcus showed him the deed. The deed checked out. Hayes apologized, looked around at the wreckage, and asked if Marcus needed anything. Marcus said no, he had everything he needed. That was a lie. He needed nearly everything, but pride kept him from saying it. Hayes came back 2 days later with a thermos of coffee, a bag of nails, and a circular saw he said his cousin did not use anymore. He did not say anything about it being a gift. He just left the stuff on the front step and drove away. A few weeks later, he came back with a propane heater and a sleeping bag rated for cold weather. Marcus started with the roof. The collapsed section was about 12 feet by 15 feet, and he knew he could not fix it before the next rain. He used the salvageable lumber from the original roof, cut new rafters from fallen pine trees on the property, and patched the hole with corrugated metal sheeting he scavenged from an abandoned shed at the edge of his land. It took him 11 days working from sunrise to sundown. When the first heavy rain came, only one corner leaked, and he caught the drips in a coffee can. He still remembers laughing out loud at that single dripping corner. After everything, he was already winning. The walls were next. He pulled out the rotten boards one at a time. He cut replacement boards from felled trees, dried them in the sun for 2 weeks, and nailed them into place. He insulated the gaps with old newspapers, plastic bags, and eventually proper fiberglass insulation he bought in scraps from a discount construction supply store an hour away. The owner of that store, a man named Ray, started giving Marcus a discount on damage inventory after he heard about the project. Eventually, he just started giving it away. Water was the next problem. The creek was fine for cooking and washing dishes, but he wanted something better. He spent 3 weeks designing a rainwater catchment system. He built gutters out of cut and bent sheet metal, and he mounted them along the new roof. He ran the gutters into a 500-gallon plastic tank he bought from a farmer who was switching to a bigger setup. He added a charcoal and sand filter system based on a YouTube tutorial from a man in Vermont. He installed a hand pump he found on sale at a hardware store. The first time he turned that pump and clean water came out, Marcus sat on the floor of his barn for 20 minutes without moving. He had not had reliable access to water in over 2 years. He cried. He admits this freely now in interviews. He just sat on the floor and cried. The shower came next. He built a small enclosure in the corner of the barn, ran a pipe from a black plastic water container he mounted on the roof, and used the sun to heat the water. His first hot shower in his own home took place on a warm afternoon in June. He stood under that water for 45 minutes. He used a full bar of soap. He scrubbed every inch of skin he could reach. When he stepped out, he sat on his front step in clean clothes and watched the sun set over the tree line. He says it was the best evening of his life. Electricity was the breakthrough that changed everything. Marcus had been browsing Facebook Marketplace at the public library in town. He found a listing from a man in Murfreesboro who was selling 6 used solar panels for $200 total. The man was upgrading his system and just wanted them gone. Marcus did not have $200. He drove out anyway in a borrowed pickup truck from Linda Patterson and explained his situation. The man, a retired electrician named Bill, listened to the whole story. Then he loaded the panels into the truck, threw in a used charge controller and a bank of deep cycle batteries, and told Marcus to pay him whenever he could. He wrote his number on a piece of cardboard. They shook hands. Bill ended up driving out to the property the following weekend to help him wire the system properly. He came back 4 more times over the next 2 months. Marcus spent the next 2 weeks installing the system. He mounted the panels on the south-facing slope of the barn roof. He ran wiring through conduit he scavenged from a construction site dumpster with permission from the foreman. He wired up basic outlets, 2 ceiling lights, and a switch by the front door. The night he flipped that switch and the lights came on inside the barn, he stood in the doorway and watched it like he was looking at something miraculous. He had built this from nothing, from scrap and salvage and stubbornness. He stayed up until 2 in the morning that night, just turning the lights on and off, sitting in the warm yellow glow and writing in his notebook. The wood stove was the final piece before winter. Marcus had been searching for a cast iron stove for months. He could not afford a new one, which would have cost over $1,000. He found his stove at an estate sale in Shelbyville. An old farmer had passed away, and his family was selling everything. The stove was sitting in a shed, covered in cobwebs, but it was solid. They were asking $75. Marcus paid it. The farmer's son helped him load it into the borrowed truck, and he refused to take any extra money for the help. Installing the stove and chimney almost defeated him. The chimney needed to be properly insulated where it passed through the roof, or the entire barn could burn down. He spent 3 full days reading building code documents at the library. He studied chimney designs. He drew sketches on grocery bags. Eventually, he built a triple-walled chimney pass-through using metal sleeves and ceramic insulation. He tested it for 2 weeks before trusting it with a real fire. When he finally lit that stove on a cold November evening, the heat that filled his small home was unlike anything he had felt in years. He sat in front of the open stove door for hours, just watching the flames, and finally fell asleep on the floor with a blanket over him. Word about Marcus started spreading slowly through Bedford County. Linda Patterson, the neighbor who had once called the sheriff on him, started bringing him fresh eggs from her chickens. Officer Hayes stopped by every couple of weeks just to say hello. The owner of the discount construction supply store started giving Marcus first pick of damaged lumber. A local farmer dropped off a cord of seasoned firewood and refused to give a name. Bill the electrician brought over a small refrigerator he had been using in his garage. In December of 2024, a local reporter named Jennifer Chin heard about Marcus from her hairdresser. Her hairdresser was Linda Patterson's daughter. Jennifer drove out to the property, expecting to find a feel-good local story for the regional paper. What she found instead was a fully functioning home with rainwater plumbing, solar electricity, a wood stove heating system, a small chicken coop with 4 hens, a vegetable garden being prepped for spring, and a man who could explain every single component in detail. She spent 4 hours interviewing him. She took dozens of photos. She walked through every part of the property and could not find a single corner that had not been thought through. Her article ran in the Tennessean. Then it got picked up by the Associated Press feed. Then a video producer in Nashville reached out. The video she made about Marcus reached 8 million views in 10 days. Donations started arriving at a P.O. box he did not even know he had been assigned. Local hardware stores sent gift cards. A regional bank set up a small trust fund in his name without asking him. A construction company in Knoxville sent a flatbed truck full of building materials. Marcus was overwhelmed. He told the producer in his follow-up interview that he did not want money. He did not want fame. What he wanted it was for other people in his old situation to know that this was possible. So he started teaching. Today, Marcus runs free workshops every Saturday on his property. People drive in from 3 states. He teaches the basics of off-grid living to anyone who shows up. He covers rainwater collection, basic electrical wiring, wood stove installation, and how to identify cheap rural land at county auctions. He has helped 12 formerly homeless people identify and buy cheap rural parcels at county auctions. He has personally helped 4 of them start their own builds. 2 of them have already moved into their new homes. He still lives in his barn. He has added a small bedroom extension and a proper kitchen, but the core structure is the same. He bought a second abandoned property last spring, 2 miles down the road, and is helping a Vietnam veteran named Henry restore that one too. They work on it together every weekday. Henry, who had been sleeping in his car for almost a year, now has a roof over his head and a project that gives his days a reason to start. When asked in a recent interview what he tells people who are struggling, Marcus said something simple. He said that for a long time he believed his situation was permanent, that the world had decided who he was, and there was no changing it. He said the moment that belief broke was the moment he bought the barn, not when he finished it, not when the lights came on, the moment he made a decision and acted on it. He also talks openly about the dark moments. The first week on the property, when a thunderstorm rolled through and he sat shivering under the leaking roof, he was convinced he had made the worst mistake of his life. There was the night he ran out of food and walked 4 miles back to the highway just to ask a gas station attendant for help. The early morning, he woke up to find that someone had stolen his shovel and bucket from outside the barn. He talks about all of it because he says nobody else does. People see the finished barn and assume the journey was inspiring the whole way through. It was not. Most days, he says, it was just the next thing on the list, and the next, and the next. A barn that everyone said was worthless became a home. A man that the system had written off became a teacher, and a county that almost forgot a piece of land existed now has a small community of builders who learned everything they know from a man who started with $175 and a notebook full of YouTube notes. If you want to see more stories like this one, the kind that do not get the attention they deserve, hit subscribe. We post videos every week about people who refuse to accept what the world told them was possible. Marcus Williams is still building. The second barn is almost finished. Henry is already drawing up plans for a small workshop out back where they can teach more people. There are 3 more abandoned properties on the Bedford County auction list this spring, and Marcus already has names of people he wants to help bid on them. The work continues. The cold winters keep coming, and inside that barn, the wood stove keeps burning.